Welcome, everyone, and a heartfelt thank you for being with us today. I'm Susan Biani, and I'm a proud member of the Sacred Dance Guild, and I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. And thank you for coming to the Sacred Dance Guild's fourth in a series of interviews with honorary members, people we consider living legacies and whom we are asking 5 important questions. These questions were created by the team working on the Sacred Dance Guild's Legacy Project. After 62 years of experience, the Sacred Dance Guild has decided that now is the time to create a process to accredit sacred dance facilitators. There are a number of aspects to the project. One of them is to discover some of the gems that those who have been doing this work for many years can share with those of us here in the present and be documented for those who will follow us in the future. We're absolutely delighted that Banafsheh Sayyad has agreed to be our 4th person interviewed in the series. So without ado, I want to introduce Banafsheh to you. She's a Persian sacred dancer, choreographer, transformational teacher, and founder of Dance of Oneness. Banafsheh Sayyad performs and teaches internationally, initiating people into the wisdom of their body, inspiring them to live their everyday life as a sacred dance. Known for her innovative movement vocabulary, Banafsheh is one of the few bearers of authentic Persian dance in the world, an innovator of Sufi dance, previously performed only by men, and one of the only dance artists who has mastered a fusion of high-level dance technique with spiritual embodiment. Her modality, Dance of Oneness, is dance as a spiritual path and science of embodiment that operates in 3 dimensions, the art of dance. Rigorous technique and self-expression, wisdom teachings, and healing. With an MFA in dance from UCLA and an MA in Chinese medicine, she is dedicated to individual and collective healing through conscious movement. Banafsheh's award-winning work has been presented in North America, Europe, and Australia. Her film, In the Fire of Grace, traces Rumi's journey of the soul in dance. This amazing film is available from her website. Based in Los Angeles, she teaches across North America, Europe, and Turkey in famous retreat centers. I'm deeply honored to be spending time with you today, Banafsheh. We welcome you warmly and thank you so much for accepting this invitation to share your sacred dance experiences and wisdom with us. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. So before we ask the 5 questions, Banafsheh, I would be very happy if you could talk about your personal journey with sacred dance.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you to the Sacred Dance Guild for your recognition and your support of what I've given my whole life to. It's truly an honor to be with you. And thank you to those of you who've joined this conversation today. I'd like to begin my story, which is a little bit long, in reverence to life, to beauty, to Gaia, our precious earth, and to our togetherness, and special tenderness and love toward those who are suffering from the crises we're living through. I was born in Tehran, Iran, and live these days in the mountains of Topanga, California, the ancestral land of the Tumba people. For as long back as I remember, I've had two passions, one for dance and the other for spirit, the mystery of life, that which animates but is not seen. These two passions, these two flames merged for me over time, and my dance became a way to commune with the mystery and to become a channel for the mystery to express in the world. The earliest memories I have of myself are of dancing, but I was not schooled in dance while growing up in Iran, as dance is not highly regarded in my culture, primarily due to the religious stigma it carries. Islam, that has dominated Iran for centuries, deems dance as sinful. And even though I come from a long lineage of performing artists, my father is a very famous actor, filmmaker, and theater director, and both he and my mother are not religious people, my family didn't feel it was important for me to train. So I trained myself throughout my childhood and teenage years. I had a daily routine for myself that I'd adhered to with great discipline. And I made dances all the time, encouraging and sometimes forcing my friends to dance with me. My passion for spirit was first kindled by my grandmother, who connected me with the heart of Islam through her own pure heart and taught me the rituals and the inner meaning of them. I began living in two worlds from that time, the ancient and mystical world of my grandmother and the modern artistic world of my parents. And these two worlds have really shaped my life, and over time I became a bridge between the two. As a little girl, I was a dancing little Muslim, which is contradictory and conflicting when you consider that exoteric Islam considers dance a sin, haram. But in my grandmother's transmission of Islam, I didn't experience conflict. But it was later, after the Islamic Revolution of 1979 in Iran, that I began to experience great conflict. The violence, the treachery, the injustice, the inhumane murder on a mass scale, the intolerance of other religions, the oppression of women, and the tragedies in my own family, all done in the name of Islam, just did not correspond to what my grandmother had taught me. So I was quite shattered, and in my utter despair in my early teens, discovered the consoler of my heart and the heart of so many. And that was Rumi, who showed me that with Islam, I was at the gate of the spiritual quest, and that I needed to open the gate and enter into the heart, into the realm of the heart. Rumi became my second spiritual guide after my grandmother and continues to guide me as a mystic and a dancer. The very first form of dance I trained in was flamenco. I discovered flamenco in my later teens when my family and I had already immigrated to the US. I found flamenco in the films of Carlos Saura, and I was on fire from first sight. It was the first style of dance that I had seen that I really wanted to learn, and yet I felt that I'd already known this form and that I've always danced it. The stance of the strong yet sensual woman who holds herself with dignity and passion and is the queen of her own queendom really inspired me. And it makes sense that I would be drawn to this form. Flamenco is a hybrid form. It's a great meeting of the East and the West, emerging from a people migrating from India through the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North Africa to finally settle in Spain. It has evolved as an expression of gypsies, a people who are constantly moving, going from one place to another, one culture to another, outsiders who needed to become self-reliant and sovereign in an unknown environment. I was an outsider, yet now in the US, I was free to follow my passion. And through flamenco, I learned how to express my deep grief and pain from having left my country, and the anger of what happened to my country, and having to leave my friends and loved ones, the sadness of that. And it was inevitable that I would choose the most, or the form that chose me would be the most vehement, fierce, naked form, to transform the energies of suffering into ecstasy and into praise and art. Flamenco shows us how to refuse to allow the outside world to overpower us and tame and break us, tame us and break us. Instead of letting pain and grief engulf us, or anger, anxiety, and fear harden and freeze us, we keep moving, we keep dancing them, transforming them into art. It's like holding both joy and the pain as inseparable dance partners. Flamenco helped me dance my rage and sorrow, and showed me how important it is not to repress them. It's possible not to be frightened of destructive energies and to use them for fierce creation. This is what Rumi means, I feel, when he says creation, destruction. I am dancing for them both. Once I found my teacher, Antonia Rojas Kabakov, and started training, I was 18 years old then. I became fully immersed and quickly excelled from the beginner level to performing, joining the troupe that she led at UC Irvine, where I was an undergrad. And for a few years, I was strictly a flamenca. It was the only form I danced. Flamenco is a dance of fire, and teaches you how to be a carrier, guardian of the flame. And I learned that through burning, unfortunately perhaps. And boy, did I burn, which I will not get into here, but only to say that flamenco really empowers us and helps us develop a strong sense of self. And because I burned from this form, from my own experience, I no longer understood where all the power I was expressing and the other dancers and musicians were expressing was coming from. I started to question it. Was it the ego? I didn't understand it anymore, so I couldn't dance it. I felt I had uncovered the shadow of flamenco in myself as pride and a destructive self-absorption. So I floated around for a while in confusion and in despair, until one day, quite unexpectedly, I ran into a group of people in a park doing very slow movements in unison. I watched their entire routine in utter amazement. I love dancing in a slow, drawn-out tempo when I danced alone, and I would move in this way, in a similar way that I was witnessing. This was my first encounter with Tai Chi, and my reaction was exactly the same as when I saw flamenco, in that here was a modality that I wanted to study with all my being, yet at the same time, I already knew it. It felt like I'd always moved in this way. But in Tai Chi, I had a completely different experience, of course, than flamenco. I found the middle ground I had been missing from the all or nothing world of flamenco. I went from having the proud face of a lioness to completely losing my face and melting my identity into the mystery. A lioness needs balance and emptiness so as not to be consumed by her own inferior quality. The guardian of the flame is not the flame itself. I needed to learn this, and I needed the soothing of water and to be submerged in unknowing, because flamenco really knows all the sounds of passion and the eros and the howl of the primordial, unbounded human. For me, needed to dissolve into the formless, into the unknowing silence. I was too full and I needed to become empty. I studied with a master of Tai Chi and Qigong named Dr. Wong, and watching him do Tai Chi for the very first time brought tears to my eyes. I was witnessing one of the most beautiful dances I had ever seen. Tai Chi became my salvation and my direct communion with spirit. Through the gentle, slow movements, I entered into a silent conversation with life. As I practiced outdoors, I felt became one with nature. It was thoroughly healing for me. I'd been so shattered and was now being pieced back together. I experienced the universe as a great big womb enveloping, embracing, and protecting me. I felt my own body began to expand and include all that was around me, the clouds, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the grass, the ocean, the birds, the whole earth merged into a oneness. And I was inside the oneness. My training in dance began with the element of fire and flamenco, the yang energy, and I was now training in the element of water, the yin energy, and coming in touch with the undercurrent of all movements, the profound, undifferentiated, dynamic stillness of the one. It was my immersion in Tai Chi that led me to study Taoism and Chinese medicine. I'd become more and more interested in the relationship between movement and healing. And simultaneously, my spiritual yearnings and this deep questioning that arose in me about who am I after the burning that I experienced led me to the Gurdjieff work, which is an esoteric school that works on the harmonious development of the human being. I was in the work for a number of years and can say that it formed the foundation of how I see the world. Sacred movements are central to the Gurdjieff work, and I learned many, many things through the sacred movements. But what I will say here is that I learned how sacred dance is objective and scientific. It can be scientific. The postures and spatial patterns of the movements, the Gurdjieff movements, are based in sacred geometry, and they constitute a language that aligns the people doing the movements and those watching to something impersonal and beyond subjective preferences, likes or dislikes. It connects us with the laws of the universe, if you will, and what Plato calls the forms or absolutes, such as truth and beauty. I learned how these forms can actually be communicated when dancers are focused on embodying them through special postures, sequences, and spatial patterns. The Gurdjieff movements also taught me the exact opposite of what I had learned in flamenco, which was the importance of personal expression. Gurdjieff says, real art is knowledge, not talent. The movements taught me how one can become the instrument of something greater through dance, whereby the dancer and the viewers are both transformed. In the Gurdjieff movement, the individual face or the individual expression dissolves into the service of the greater. The aim is not to appear virtuosic or special, but to be available for a finer, freer energy to manifest through our effort in integrating mind, body, and feelings in the present moment. A dancer who tries to outshine others as an individual separates herself from the group, as these dances are done in groups, and thereby disrupts the harmony. Through the Gurdjieff movements, through the Gurdjieff work, I feel I received teachings in the earth element, as well as the air, the domain of the mind. The other form that has shaped me and has had great influence on me is whirling. I always loved to spin as a child. Most of us do as children, but we stop. Many of us stop when we grow older, but I never stopped. I enjoyed the euphoric feeling it gave me, and you could say I was sort of addicted to it. I learned formal dance turns in flamenco training, but whirling is entirely different. In dance, we control our turns. In whirling, we let go of control and allow the turn to take us. So in my early 20s, around 23, I spontaneously began to whirl for long concentrated periods during the night. I whirled in complete darkness and in silence. My experience of whirling in those days was like an exorcism, a real clearing, a realigning with my essence. There was so much resistance in me against whirling, so many voices that wanted me to stop. And I sensed a strong force that just didn't want me to get in touch with my true essence. But I simply would not give into it. And I just kept going and going and going. And I had indescribable visions after whirling On one occasion, after I stopped, I had a vision in which I saw myself as a translucent, three-dimensional, violet-colored diamond turning amidst an infinite number of rotating diamonds of different hues, all in a grid spanning endlessly in all directions. There's so much to say about whirling. I would just say that Rumi's love poetry, the poetry we love so much from him, that inspires so many of us, the poetry in Divan Shams, flowered through him in the Persian language, in perfect rhyme and meter, as he whirled and danced the sama. Sama is the reference to whirling. It means to listen. His followers, students, and companions wrote down these poems, and this is how they've been preserved. This is a testament to the sama, to the whirling as an extraordinary dance that aligns us directly with the source of all life and the wellspring of creativity. For myself, I've tasted the infinite within the finite space of my body. I feel like it has been a training for me in the element of ether. And it brought me, like Tai Chi, into the field of oneness, but on a much larger, more dangerous, if you will, annihilating and much less predictable scale. So much to share. The Gurdjieff work and the Sama, the whirling, awakened in me a passion for my own heritage. In my quest to know myself deeply, I became curious about my roots. I had unconsciously, I feel, disassociated myself from my own culture because of all the traumas I had experienced. I believe it was necessary for me to disengage from the temporal aspect of my culture so as to discover its timeless beauty, which emerged for me through Persian dance and the Sufi path. Persian dance emerged out of the faceless flow of the Tai Chi, the ferocity of flamenco, and the objective perfection of the Gurdjieff movements, and the surrender of the Sama. As I was inspired by the Gurdjieff movements, I felt driven to communicate the sacred through Persian dance, especially, but I wanted to incorporate the sensual dimension that I felt was missing in the movements. I experienced Persian dance as a melting and a dissolving into a subtle, tender, and ecstasy. It's an expression of the divine feminine, tender, sensual, and erotic, yet mystical, noble, and sovereign. It's the manifestation of the goddess in the human, I feel, adoring her beloved, a direct initiation from beauty, pouring herself into your body, awakening in your body, and waiting for your body to flower in order to express her. I feel it, the dance comes out of the soul of the rose, perfumed by the great mystics, the Persian mystics, Rumi, Hafez, Attar. It's hard to say what comes first, the dance, the music, or the poetry. I think all of them are lovers and dance partners. When people ask me, where did I learn dance, Persian dance from? Whom did I study with? I always say it was from the poetry, from Persian poetry and the music. The music taught me how to dance to it, merge with it, and resonate with its nuances and rhythms. And the poetry gave me the inspiration. The stanza from Rumi, let your body become an instrument playing a love song, describes Persian dance beautifully. I was inspired to convert the Persian alphabet into postures, and I did this together with my sister, Mariam. These postures, when you put them together, enabled us to dance out words and stanzas of the poetry. I was inspired by the precision and objectivity of the Gurdjieff movements, and I wanted a system where I wouldn't be directing the choreography from a personal point of view, but allowed it to emerge from choosing a particular word or a stanza of the poetry. To me, dance is a kind of calligraphy, and so we began to dance out words like love, esh, and stanzas from Rumi's poetry, literally spelling them out in movement. I was astounded by the beautiful sequences that were created through us. It was like excavating an ancestral memory. Persian dance became for me the liberation of Aphrodite. She appeared from under the veil. Aphrodite, the beautiful one who the whole universe melts in adoration for. For me, she was very shy in the beginning, all covered up and demure, more pious than sensual, but slowly she revealed herself more and more. And it was like a healing experience for me, piecing myself back together from the fragmentation and awakening the connection of the sacred and the sensual. My sensuality and my femininity, for that matter, were being sanctified through this dance, through this expression of the goddess. So these forms that I mentioned, the flamenco, the tai chi, and the gurdjieff movements, these were the forms that I studied, and the forms that flowered organically through me was the Samoa and the Persian dance, and also trance. But all of these forms emphasize a kind of letting go and being moved by something greater, be it duende in flamenco or the Tao in Tai Chi, consciousness in the Gurdjieff work, or the Vivid in the Samoa in the Persian dance. So in my whole journey, I've been more interested in, passionate about the dance, not so much about my dance, which for me is awfully limited and boring, really, but the dance. I desire a lovemaking to take place inside me between spirit and matter, and allowing this to come all together. All these forms that I mentioned really was by completely letting go. I felt that I knew too much, and when I let go and let all of what I knew serve what I didn't, um, that's when the real form emerged. I choreograph and source my dances from trance, and because I'm more interested in what comes through me, not what I can do and how I can express or how great I can be, but how available can I be for what needs to be expressed. I'm also obviously equally interested in being grounded so that the what needs to come through me can come through me. So the structure and the form serving what you abandon yourself to. The more disciplined your body, the more grounded through the practice, the more you can abandon to the unknowable and become its instrument.
One of the things that I would like to ask you is, with your relationship with your family and your relationship with Iran, um, having been in the Middle East myself, I realize there's a lot of push and pull and a lot of tragedy. And have you overcome that? Have you been able to go back? Do you still stay connected with your family?
I'm not able to go back. Dance, it's for two reasons. Dancers have a hard time in Iran, especially if you're have practice outside of Iran. People know you. The women's dancing is still prohibited in public. Um, Women can dance for themselves, but not as for men and women. And also my father has been very against it, so for me, I have not been able to be back.
Sorry to hear that.
I know.
But you're a courageous woman. It's just
So
so beautiful.
one day, one day.
5 questions. The first one is, what are your thoughts on creating sacred space, whether it be indoor, outdoor, site-specific, or inside?
Sacred space we create with our intention and our focus. It's sacred space is a safe container that people can feel they can express their authentic self and not be in survival or defensive mode. So it's important to seal it with love and in love, I feel. And with our dancing, we also sanctify the space. We create sacred space. Whirling that I was talking about is a channeling of light and transmitting blessing, healing. So we literally create sacred space with our dancing when we're focused on this channeling of light and transmitting blessings. People who are present during a whirling ceremony and are not dancing but or playing music receive the benefits of this channeling of light if they tune in, if they also tune in and participate. And when you dance in a space or enter a sacred space where sacred dance has been held, so we do it with our intention and our focus, but when you enter a space that has been dedicated to sacred dance over time and you really feel the energy and you're supported by it, of course. Since the pandemic began, many of us, most of us have transferred our in-person gatherings online. And so we've been having quite a journey in creating virtual sacred space. And it's been very effective, I feel. We're invited to experience ourselves more as energy than matter. So it's been a spiritual acceleration of sorts. And also each one of us dancing in our own home as we are together are invited to create a sanctuary, a temple in our own home, and thereby sanctify our home with our dance. So instead of going out to a sacred dance event, we bring the dance and the sense of the sacred to our home, to our family and the people we live with, which is very important. Prior to the pandemic, the big question we asked was, how do you maintain the openness, the radiance, the afterglow of an event, a workshop, or an intensive, and take it into your daily life? And now that the events are literally intertwined with our daily lives, you can see it pouring and infiltrating our lives. As I was saying before, the Samo, the whirling is a balance between creating a balance between the soul and the body, the transcendent and the immanent, the invisible and the visible. So you're literally bridging them so that the one can be felt in you and through you. And when we dance at home in this way, we're merging the two realms much more clear. We begin to infuse the so-called ordinary and the mundane with a sense of the miraculous, with the glory of the transcendent.
That's
So,
beautiful. Thank you so much. And the second question is, what are your thoughts on creating sacred community, either in groups or when participating or when leading? Did you hear that?
Yes. There was a little bit of internet connection issue.
Oh,
The
okay.
sacred spaces, creating sacred communities connected to sacred space. The key is entering into the heart. Our heart energy is truly unlimited, and we feel the unlimitedness through connection with one another and with nature. The more we enter into a collective heart space, the more we're able to create sacred community, which is based in trust, safety, and a sense of belonging, where we feel we're not being judged, where everyone shines and feels seen and heard and held. And with a shared intention, we can positively influence the environment with our sacred community and the world. When a group of people dancing together are all focused on the same kind of effort, namely to serve something greater than themselves, then they construct an invisible architecture together that has a harmonious effect on themselves, on the group, and the whole world. I've been interested in creating that kind of community, obviously in my workshops and in my teaching sessions, but also in performance. I've always been interested in taking the audience on a journey, not so much presenting a spectacle where they're passive onlookers, but inviting them to inwardly participate and become a community, so that a real marriage of performance and performance as an outward expression, and the meditative state, the inner space, which is what our ancestors did in their ceremonies. This is the roots of dance. They were one and the same, the meditative state and the inner state and the expression of that. But over time, the commodification of performance and approaching performance as solely entertainment has taken away that sacred dimension. I also want to add that in the times we live in this great time of reckoning and great awakening, where we've been given the opportunity to really ask, who are we? Who am I? Both individually and collectively, and what do we want to be, and what do we want to dedicate ourselves to? We're all suffering one way or another from the ravages of human ideology and conduct, the catastrophic environmental degradation that has led to the pandemic, the systemic racism and drastic inequality in the United States and elsewhere, the systemic sexism and human and animal rights violations in my own country of Iran and elsewhere. I feel those of us who know things are not right are called into a sacred community where we can together come into a deep reverence for life and live and dance as stewards of a new order based in love, in true humanity, in compassion, respect and honoring of all life, all forms, all shapes, all colors, all genders.
That is so beautiful, so beautiful. Okay, number 3, how does the sacred manifest through movement or dance in your work, in your daily practice, or in your community? I think you've answered a lot of these questions already. But I don't know if they want to have.
I just want to add to that. Sure, I'll just add to that by saying that obviously, from what I shared, I'm dedicated to living and walking my talk. So I strive to model and embody what I believe in. And my aim is not to live 2 lives, one as Banafsheh, the sacred dancer, teacher, and one as just little old me, but letting my life be my art and connecting the two, bringing them into a oneness, so that the person who is in teaching or is on stage is not different than the person in life. I'll give you an example. A student of mine, a young, beautiful dancer, asked me a question once. She said, why is it that most of the dancers that are so amazing on stage, they're just bundles of joy and excitement, and they fly on stage like free birds? Why are they so miserable in their day-to-day life off stage? And to me, the answer is obvious, but it's quite disturbing. A dancer who enthralls on stage and is so inspiring, but is gripped with misery off stage, is leading 2 lives. In one life, she's a dancer who brings magic to audiences. And in another life, she doesn't know this magic herself. She doesn't know how to dance her life. I feel that as dancers, we need to really understand the power of dance and see it as a spiritual path, and integrate the dancer and the person dancing and live one life, and apply the concepts and the techniques that help us dance to our best ability, at our best capacity to living. All of them translate, developing flexibility, having the capacity to change direction with little or short no notice, understanding that polarities are opposites are needed when you dance, and that they're dance partners, and they don't need to be conflicting, but they can come into a dance together. And through movement, we can bless and release mental and emotional stagnation. These are just a few examples. This quote that I love, attributed to Jesus, saying that entire universe belongs to the dancer. And if you don't know, you will not know. If you don't dance, you won't know what will come to pass, is profound. And Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she says, dance is the joy of the soul. And when mystical teachers or scientists even are at a loss for describing the mystery of life, they say it's a dance. So understanding that when we're blessed with love for dance, that dance is profound, and to uncover these concepts and these ideas through dance. I believe that everything is a rumor until it's verified and experienced through the body, and that living is the embodiment of the transcendent. So just like Rumi says, there's a spirit signless, but we're immersed in all its signs. There's a spirit placeless, but head to toe is its place. So uncovering these profound, profound ideas in the body through dance.
And anyway, number 4 is, why do you do what you do? I know you've answered it.
I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. It's like asking a tree, why are you a tree? I dance, therefore I am. And I am because I dance. And when my students or audience members speak about how their life has been transformed through this dance, I get confirmation of why I do what I do.
Thank you so much for that. And then the last one is, if there was one thing you would want to convey to those facilitating sacred dance events or to sacred dancers in general, what would that be?
Do the inner work and walk your talk. Don't just do the motions of the movements you're expressing. Live them, and let the sacred emerge from the nitty-gritty of your living and interacting, not just from an ideal of what it means to express the sacred. And teach by example. In the words of the great Taoist sage Lao Tzu, he says, guide without interfering. So I would say, try to live and embody what you teach, and teach from your embodied knowing, and not just from what you know mentally and have not experienced yet. And be authentic. Be authentic. Whether you're preserving a tradition or evolving it. I feel in sacred dance we have those who preserve tradition and those who evolve it. Preservers of tradition are just, they hand it down as it has been practiced. And those who evolve it should also be prepared to fully immerse in the tradition and learn the lineage, be true to it, honor it. And while you honor the lineage, unfold your own myth, your own expression based on your learning.
Beautiful. Banafsheh, we're truly blessed to hear your story and see your dancing, while expanding all our hearts in the fire of grace. It's been quite something else. And I don't know if there's anything else you would like to share, but you certainly have shared a tremendous amount with us today, and I deeply appreciate it.